Welcome back to the Lines for Christ. I'm Pastor Noel, and I am joined today by Dr. Bradley Berg from Missouri, and he's the founder of Encompassed Purpose. And he's also written a few books on coaching and on healing with especially in the areas of health of mental health and behavioral health and addiction recovery. And so I'm just going to turn it over to him, and I'm going to let him introduce himself and talk about some of the work that he's done in some of these different areas, because I know that our listeners can definitely benefit from his professional uh, the things that he's done in his professional area. I can't even explain it. I can't even put it into words. He's he's uh, he's also a faith-based treatment professional. So I'm really interested in hearing his uh, the way he goes about helping people with their addiction and their mental health treatment. Dr. Berg, welcome to the Lines for Christ, man. I'm super excited to have you here, and I know our listeners are too. And I'm just going to turn it over to you and let you introduce yourself and get us started, man.
Well, thank you for having me. So, what I'll do is I'll kind of talk about what brought me to this point real quick, just kind of do an overview. But my dad was an alcoholic off and on, and physically abused when I was a kid. He passed away when I was 18. And at that point, then I just dove into work, workaholic, drug addict, alcoholic. And did that for several years, knew nothing about myself. And then to jump ahead, way ahead, when I was 38, I passed away for the third time. And when that happened, I decided I owned a manufacturing company at the time, decided I didn't want to work any more Sundays, and decided to sell that. But I still knew nothing about myself. I probably read 300 business books, but never a book on self improvement.
So I,
And
I don't mean to interrupt you there, but
no, go ahead.
can you explain what you mean by passed away? So you said you passed away three times. Can you explain
I,
that to me, please?
I have, well, I have several health problems, but this is called neurocardiogenic syncope. And I actually, my heart stops
Oh, wow.
and I passed away. Um, at that time, I was married to my first wife, and she walked into intensive care after they brought me back. And I said, she was crying. So I said, "Oh, they told you I made it." So,
Oh, wow.
but
That's crazy, man. That is bananas. I've um I mean to have to go through something like that, you say three different times?
actually, it's been four now
Four now. Wow.
because I had a quadruple bypass also.
Oh man. Well, praise God, man. I'm glad you're doing better. Yeah, glad to have you here, man.
Well, at that time I was talking about, I say at that time, the devil didn't want me, and God said, "You hadn't even started yet." So, but what happened, I was a pretty terrible guy, even though I quit drinking and doing drugs at that time. But I was a pretty terrible guy. My wife, after almost 24 years, divorced me. She probably should have divorced me after about 4 years with how I was. I finally started working on myself at that point. But what really happened was, and I don't hear voices a lot, never heard it again, but I was sitting on the back porch smoking a cigar and having a cup of coffee one morning, and I heard God very powerfully say, "Help people." And so after that, I hadn't been to church in, say, 20 years. It changed me overnight where I did start going to church. I had such a thirst for the word. I actually went back to school. And that's where the self help started coming in because I went to school and I knew some people with mental illness too. So I started doing that and fell in love with the brain. Long story short, I got my master's in divinity, then I got a PhD in counseling. Now I'm getting a second PhD, and I still take classes every day, and every week, because for one, neuroscience changes so much, but then two, you realize after you get educated to a certain point how much nobody knows. And so the more I can know, the more I can help people. And it was about, I've ran clinics and things like that. But then about 3 years ago now, we took and bought this. Well, about 5 years ago, we bought it, but an 8,000 square foot building. Then about 3 years ago, we built out 3 apartments. We have 13 inpatient rooms, and the outpatient, and we're doing a faith-based 1 year program where we work a lot on the cognitive side, correcting the behaviors that go along with it. Because I do a lot of Zoom and, virtual too. And I've coached people with different addictions, pornography and things like that. And it very few actually have the addiction of any kind. They use it as a self medication because of something else that happened, a trauma, things like that. And you have to get to that root cause to help them. And we've seen that, a 21-day program for substance abuse isn't going to be able to correct 20 years of behavior and whatever happened originally, the root cause.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And we were talking a little bit about this before we started the show, um, where I had not looked into, but I've heard some other people talking about these the different behaviors that come out of the brain, and it's like there's different personalities within your brain. I don't want to call it a multiple personality because that's not what it is, but it's just uh, we get stuck in these different patterns in our brain where every time something happens, we default to this personality that can be destructive, or it's intended to be maybe protective, but it causes you to get stuck, and it keeps you from going forward, and it can cause depression and some different mental illnesses. Uh, and people misdiagnose that sometimes, where they're just stuck in a loop, and they just need something to get them out of that. Can you talk a little bit about that side?
A lot. But
That's a
what
really open-ended question, right?
a lot of people, what they do is walk around like they have no control. And I believe God gave you control of the brain. They can say they're giving it to God, but God's going, I gave you a brain. You can correct this. So there's what's called neuroplasticity. And we do, as we grow older, especially, we get in the way a lot because we get cognitive biases and cognitive distortions that might not be factual, but we keep building that up. And I always say it's like a tree. And so you have all these beliefs right here. But what you can do if you stay in the present and you intentionally have new thoughts, that root system on that tree can build out and these will shrink. So you can actually create new behaviors. It takes a lot of consistency and a lot of dedication. It's not easy. It's not like taking a pill, but you can definitely change behaviors, and you can do it very quickly if you're dedicated to it. And that's one thing we really work on. A lot of our guys come furloughed from a judge, they've been in prison, and that's a life they've known. They've maybe never been given a chance. They didn't have good parents growing up, or things happen. And so you have to get to that root problem and then change that behavior that's kept them locked up off and on for years.
Right. Yeah. It's almost like they're locked up in their own brain, right? I mean, they're locked up in their own prison in their mind, and they don't know how to break free from it. And yeah, I mean, it's a it just shows how powerful the brain really is. And I kind of look at what you just said and say, that's it's like faith. Faith has to be intentional. You have to be intentional with your faith. You have to be intentional with wanting to change and actually going through all the steps that it takes to have that change in your life, right?
And you have to be given the tools, just like you go up and give a sermon every Sunday. But unless the person reads a scripture, they don't know if you're telling the truth or not. You have to educate yourself. And so we try to give the people the tools of the brain, which most people don't have. They've never been given. I've actually seen big, very tough guys break down and cry and say, why didn't somebody tell me this 20 years ago?
Mm.
And I've seen some really tough cases come in, and within a year, they totally change their life.
Well, that's amazing. What's different about your treatment than say like an AA, a 21 step meeting or something like that?
We're very structured where we do let the guys go to work because I don't want to keep them institutionalized. It's really easy not to drink or do drugs when you don't have that choice. So we do that, and then they come back and we can talk about the triggers that happen, things like that. But we work a lot on two different things. We work cognitive every single week, multiple times a week. And we work on different Bible studies and Christianity several times a week. I would hate to think of doing this without being able to rely on God and go, I'm going to lay this at your feet. This wasn't my problem to carry, and about forgiveness. I tell the guys, forgive for yourself. Don't forgive for the other person. You're carrying around that weight in your chest. Forgive for yourself. And love, we push that a lot. I have these guys that have been in prison for a long time. Within a month, all of them are hugging me, and that's not something, tough guys do. So,
Oh yeah,
but
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
it's
that's
really
that's
great.
awesome, man. I mean, faith, hope, and love. And the greatest is love. That's uh Paul nailed it whenever he said that. I look at Paul in the Bible. He's in the New Testament. He's like a mental health expert himself. I mean, the way he words everything and explains faith and your mentality towards faith is incredible. So yeah, I mean, I love that. I also like that you talked about the Bereans. You gotta go back and you gotta check that. Paul said that the Bereans were amazing because they checked every single thing that Paul said, and I always tell my congregation, please check everything that I say because I make mistakes. I'm a human being, and I make mistakes. And if I don't say something right or I misword something or take something out of context, I need y'all to tell me so that I can correct that. Not just for myself, but for others too. So yeah, we that's the way we run my congregation. I love it that way. We all learn together.
We have something similar. We say progress over perfection because we all make mistakes every day, no matter how hard we try. And, it says right in scripture, we're gonna. So the
Hmm.
more you can work on yourself and work on just reading scripture, that's the best self help book that's ever been written,
Yes,
if
yeah,
people would just
absolutely. Yeah.
utilize it.
Yeah, if people would utilize it in the right way. There's a lot of people that misuse scripture, and that's we got to watch out for that. And I think in a program like yours, you can teach them uh, the correct way to look at scripture and and so that they can help identify people who are misusing scripture as well, right? I mean, I think that would be important.
Well, I have a thing where you don't elbow your wife when you hear the pastor say something. You kind of look into yourself, because that's what it's all about. And that's what I feel scripture is all about. It can help you so much. It's not about anybody else. We're not God. We're not here to dictate their behaviors. That's their choice. And Jesus even and God gave them a choice. So who are we to try to, dictate how they are?
Right.
But you try to
Yes.
make yourself the best you can and serve the best you can. That's what matters.
Absolutely, man. Well said. That I couldn't have said that better myself, man. That is a very important message for people to to take in. Is
I
pay
just
attention
got
to
asked on
yourself
a
and
different podcast. They said, because I used to have fancy cars and motorcycles and big house and successful businesses. And they said, what do you want your legacy to be? And I said, at my funeral, I hope somebody says he helped a lot of people. That's my legacy. That's what I want it to be. So
amen. Yes, sir. Yeah, absolutely. And I'll stop stepping on you and interrupting you here. So, but you were talking about how your facility and your treatment is different from traditional means of recovery and addiction help.
well, I can't even imagine doing this and being secular. I mean, you have a tough road when you're doing that because we're the ones that screwed it up. So, and if you can't rely on anybody else, I already screwed it up. How am I going to fix it? So, I have a saying, atheists don't exist because I don't believe in them. So,
I like
we're
that. I like that a lot.
we're very Christian based, and it's helped the guys so much. We have one young man here, and if you can imagine, I hope you grew up in a good childhood, but he didn't. By the time he was 11, he had Narcaned his dad 4 times to bring him back to life.
Mm.
At 13, he started shooting up. Well, when you have that kind of childhood, you never had a childhood. He came in here, and I still remember the first day he was sloped over the table in a class. He didn't really speak much. Now, a year later, he just bought another new car. He got just this week, he got a pretty sizable raise at work. He's making a very good wage, and he's 22 and he's a leader of the sober living. We run it like a democracy. And even though there's guys older than him, he's came so far, they really look up to
Wow,
him.
that's awesome. That's man. I hope everybody, and I pray that everybody in your facility and under your care uh, ends up in that same with that same success story, man. That's amazing, and we talked about that before too. Like uh, a lot of people they have some short term success, and then they fall back into addiction or back into the same role that they were in before. What do you do to help keep that from happening?
We really try to, and the working helps because you get the real world stress, and then how to deal with that because we work with them. I had a tough day at work, and so we go through that with them. I went into the store in Missouri, there's alcohol at every checkout counter. Triggered me. And so we work with them over that year on that. So when they get out, they pre-planned, okay, if this happens, I'm going to do this, and this is how I'm going to deal with it. And one story I mention a lot, but it's kind of a funny story. He was in prison 19 years. He came here. He hadn't passed a urinalysis in 14 years. And I gave him a random urinalysis, and he looked at it and just stood there. And he said, "Can I keep this? This is 14 years in the making." And I said, "Sure." And so the second time he looked at it again, he smiled and he said, "Can I take this again to give it to my mom?"
Oh
And that
man,
guy, he just embraced the program, and he started his own company right at the end of it. But now, like you were talking, 2 years later, he's doing very well for himself with his company. He's still sober, and he's totally changed his life.
wow, that's amazing, man. Wow. Yeah, I love stories like that, man. That's it's so encouraging, and I know people listening. There's people that are listening that I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but I live in Texas, and if I go to a crowd, I can't throw a rock without hitting somebody who goes home and drinks a 12 pack of beer every day. I mean, it's just it's part of the lifestyle, and you have to be intentional to make those kind of changes, and I kind of compare that kind of circumstance uh, with people who are struggling with sin in general, because even when you're baptized and you're living under Christ, that sin is still ever present. It's still all around you. It's still, Satan is trying to tempt you. And I kind of compare it to somebody who's a recovering alcoholic who works in a bar. That's like living life. Sin is all around you. It's everywhere. You can't turn on the TV without seeing something that's going to try to tempt you into some kind of sin, or make you feel like you're not worthy, or make you feel like you need to purchase something to be better. It's all around us. It's everywhere.
And
So
isn't it funny? Um, you know what? I'm 57. So when I was younger, everybody went to church. Now, not so much so. But isn't it funny that God created us? He came down and died for us, and or Jesus did. And yet, I mean, if you look how much you open your scriptures a day, how much do you pray a day, how much do you scroll on your phone a day, how much do you watch TV a day, and then we wonder why we have problems. If you're spending more time in the world than you are with God, you're still going to have struggles with God, but at least he's there, and you get that peace and joy and fulfillment. Before I was a Christian, I tried to fill it with everything, but I walked around for 40 years with a hole in my chest, and overnight that went away.
amen.
And overnight, money meant nothing to me, and
Hmm.
still does. I make very little money, and I've never been happier. I am so blessed to get to see people come in and change their lives. We have two people recently that came in that were homeless. Now they have jobs and they have a purpose, and they're coming to class and they're learning things. And you see that evolution, and it's so neat to see.
That's what it's all about, Ben. Yeah. To me, that's success. It's not about what your job title is, or how much money you make, or what kind of car you drive, or how big your house is. Things that those are nice things to have, and I'm not saying that being poor and destitute is better, but that's not what's important. What's important is those kind of success stories. Whenever you get to embrace somebody who has struggled their entire life, and now they've turned a corner, and now they can live a happy life for the first time ever. And to me, that's way more important than any of the other material things that people talk about all the time with success.
And you were talking about your part of Texas. If you look on a map, I live at Lake Ozarks. And so we have millionaires and billionaires, and everybody, the whole industry is supported by drinking and drugs. And it's funny when these guys get in here, how their values change too, and go, I used to want that. I don't want that anymore.
Right. Yeah. We figure out that we just need to be stewards with the things that God provides us with, as opposed to trying to complain about not having enough or not having more. God's not a vending machine. He's given us what we need, so we need to be a good steward with it, as instead of complaining about how little He's given us. Look at it as from the point of view of look how much He's given us.
I smile because I say something very similar. I say, God's not a genie where you rub him and get your wishes. And
Yes.
that's another thing we try to teach here is don't pray for what you want all the time. you know, guys will ask me, how can I ever forgive this person for doing this? I had one of my best friends just about 2 years ago, going on now. Um, he stole over $250,000 from me. And I try to explain to the guys, what do I do about that? I pray for him because it's not him that's doing that. It is him. It's worldly him. But I also knew him before he fell off the wagon and that all happened. He would have never done that. And so I pray that he gets back to that point where he goes back to God and, quits using again and things like that. So,
Right. Yeah. And I know we've talked a lot about uh, some of the success stories from. Uh, do you have any? Do you have any people that have gone through the program and it just didn't work for them? And like, what can you learn from those kind of situations? Because I know they're going to happen. It's not 100%, right?
no, now we are actually in the 90s. But when we first started, there was a learning curve for us. We were like everybody else, where we just took everybody in. Now we actually have an application process, but it's probably not what you think. Just like I said, it was just 2 weeks ago and probably 3, 4 weeks ago, we took in two homeless people. They didn't have money to come here. But what matters to us, there's one key question: do you want to change? If you don't want to change, you're not going to last here. And we'll tell everybody that. And yeah, we've had people, there's a program up here called ICTS, and a different provider sent a person here, and he came here, and I could tell he was high. Well, we talked to him, we talked to the provider and said, we'll let him in, but this has to be it. Well, then we caught him on the grounds, smoking some weed. And then he got into a confrontation with somebody, and we just can't have that because we have guys trying to change their lives. And a lot of it gets back to, again, the tools, probation, parole. Some of the offices have curriculum that's 40 years old. Well, 40 years ago, we used a rotary phone and only 1% of us had a cell phone. Look
Right.
how
Yeah.
much it's changed. The microwave was kind of a new thing. So, it's changed a lot. And that's one thing we try to pride ourselves on, is having current up-to-date curriculum with the problems that's going on today. Behavioral addictions have rose 130%. Back when we were a kid, or when I was a kid, you're younger than me, but you had a behavioral issue, you're probably going to get a belt. That's the only behavioral issues we had back then.
Well,
Now it's a lot
just to
different.
clear the air, I am 52, or I'm fixing to be 52. So, I was raised in that era too, and my father was not against using the rod. He didn't spare the rod, and I needed it. On a lot of those occasions as well. So, yeah, but that when we talk about the how things used to be versus how they are today. Um, there's a lot. It seems like a lot of people are relying on therapy and medication um, a lot more than they used to. Used to, you could talk to your parents, or you could talk to your grandparents, or you had aunts and uncles, or people in the church, or even the community. They didn't even have to be somebody from the church. They maybe just somebody from the community who you could talk to and rely on certain things that I just don't think that's as prevalent now as it used to be. Do you see the same thing?
Yeah, and I think another issue is something we've done to ourselves. We're so overloaded with information now, and not necessarily good information. You go onto Facebook, and people don't put pictures of their bad days. They put pictures of the great days, and then you try to compare yourselves, and that doesn't help. But there's so much information we're overloaded on. And you're exactly right. I mean, I remember when I was young going to family reunions, and that's a lot of times a thing in the past now because we don't have that family unit. And a lot of times, parents, and this is why I think mental health and crime has got worse, they hand them a phone, and that's their parent now. Back when we were younger, you look a lot better than I did because you probably took care of yourself when you were younger. But um, you didn't have that. You ate dinner together. And no matter what was going on, you knew your dad and mom were there for you, whether they were good or bad parents, really, even back then. Now that's not the case. It's just a lot of the parents need parents.
Well, do you think that a lot of therapists now are way too quick to prescribe a bunch of medications to try to solve a problem as opposed to actually drilling down to the problem and helping them to work through it? We were talking about the different personalities in the brain. You, we need to try to get to the one that's at the center, and the one at the center is the one that's led by Jesus Christ, and
Right.
that's the one that we should be trying to reach, not not dealing with all the scared little kid or the abuse and this the we need to drill down to the person who can actually take charge of those other parts of your brain and help them through it, right? I mean, am I off on that?
No, we had one person here, and he was a very good manipulator. He'd been here or been through treatment 9 times, not ours. And he came to the sober living. Well, they had prescribed him so much that when he got a job where he was really active, his serotonin levels went up so much that he ended up in intensive care. And it's his fault and the doctor's because he was very good at trying to get as many pills as he can, kind of switching addictions for addictions. But I see that a lot, and I'm not against what's called medical assisted treatment. We do that here too. But if somebody, we've had other people come here that I need a couple pills, they gave me 6 prescriptions. you know, it's a lot easier to medicate than it is to change somebody. So that's where the problem comes in. And to be fair, these people came from a 21-day treatment. So they only have so much time to put into people, no matter how hard they work. And that's one reason we got to get away from that model. It's proven not effective.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's where you're going to have the advantage over those other programs because they're going to be with you long term. They're not just going to be with you short term. Okay, here's some tools. Now get out there in the middle of everything and change your life. you know, I mean, you're going to be there with them, not permanently, but for a longer period of time to help them to change those loops that they have running in their head that are causing them to turn back to the addictions and the pills and everything. And I just real quick because I keep forgetting, but you mentioned marijuana before. Why is that such a big deal in your clinic as far as uh, taking marijuana or smoking marijuana? And I'm just playing the devil's advocate
No,
here. So,
because there's two different things. There was marijuana when we were younger, and there's marijuana now. There's things called dabs or vapes, and it's not just pure marijuana. There's stuff in there that's very toxic, for one. Where I've actually talked to MDs that say it can kill you depending, on your health. And the other marijuana, you have to smoke, and people seem to like the dabs or the vapes because it makes them feel like they're not doing anything wrong. Um, and so that's my take on marijuana. I would say, the marijuana of when we grew up is not as bad, but now with the vapes and dabs, you can actually get psychosis and things like that. It really can affect your brain, and that's a problem. The other thing, and we've let this happen to ourselves, think about back when you were young, how many obese people there were, and now how many obese people there are. It's not because people change that much. It's all the polyprocessed foods. 70% of your grocery store is polyprocessed foods. And that affects the brain. I don't know if you know, but the keto diet was originally designed by the Mayo Clinic to help stop seizures. And now they're finding if you get back on the keto, if you're unhealthy, you can actually stop bipolar and schizophrenia
Wow.
because the chemicals are doing that much. And you can check when we're done. I'm not making that up. I know it sounds unrealistic, but it's called metabolic therapy. And we all, whether we want to or not, unless you're very intentional, eat some stuff that's really terrible for us. And I do it too. I still don't believe what they say about ice cream. I think that was made up by the devil or something. But um, I, you really have to pay attention to what you're putting in your body because it affects your mitochondria, affects your brain too. And people don't think of that, but it really does.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I compare it to computers. They garbage in, garbage out. It's the same concept with your body. If you're putting garbage in and you're going to get garbage out, that's you're going to feel like crap. Plain and simple. That's why a lot of people they talk about the Daniel diet, from the book of Daniel, because they were trying to they were like, yeah, here's what the king eats. We're going to give you some of his diet, and there's all these fatty foods and all this stuff. And I always in my sermons, I always call it say it's like the kid who plays video games all day and all night and drinks Red Bulls and feels like crap, the next week. And Daniel's like, no, I'm not going to eat any of that. I tell you what, you give me a salad every day, and let these other people eat what they want. And then in 6 weeks, whenever we go before the king, let's see who looks better. And the Daniel on his diet, he looked great and he felt great. The other guys, they were getting all fat and chunky and not looking so good. They didn't look like they were ready for the king's court for sure. So yeah, I mean, it's just an illustration of what you're talking about. What you put in your body is going to affect you mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. I think uh, one of my previous guests, Mickey, she wrote a book. It's called the 180-degree U-turn, YOU turn, and it's like a daily devotional, but it's intended for your diet, for what you put in, and it's encouraging you to, and it gives biblical references to uh, on a daily basis on eating healthy and being physically and mentally and emotionally healthy. And so I think that's very important, what you were saying.
And I don't want to make this a geezer hour, but I'm going to go back to our childhood again. I think a lot of it too is just slow down a little bit. When we were bored, our parents would go find some sticks to play with. We didn't need much to entertain ourselves. Where now people get up and the first thing they do is grab that cell phone and start downloading that garbage. It just, like you said, keep your cell phone out in the kitchen and then get up and pray. Get up and do push-ups. Get up and, just take some time for yourself before you just get bombarded by what is really garbage. It's not, when we were young again, the news was the news. Now it's we're going to cater to who listens to the news. So
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And just to piggyback on that point, yeah, I think the more options that we have available, the more miserable we are. If we only had if we only had three channels to watch, you looked at each channel and then you picked which channel you wanted to watch, whatever program that was. There wasn't thousands of different options available, and I think we were a lot happier whenever we had less options as opposed to having more options, and that just makes you more miserable because now even if you're watching something you want to watch, you feel like you're missing something else. And so it just makes you miserable in the process. If we could just narrow it down to just two or three options as opposed to thousands of options, I think we would be a lot happier in the long run.
we've got so entitled. And if you look how happy Jesus was. He didn't have a house at Lake Ozarks. He didn't have a house, and you didn't need a house. You still don't really, but we've gotten so entitled now. If we don't have the right mattress, therapeutic mattress, we complain about it. It just, like you said, the more options you get, the more unhappy you are because you're never satisfied with what you can achieve. There's just no way to do that.
And
If
I
you
think
look
I
back,
think I think social media plays into that too because like you were saying before, people are snapping pictures of, whatever it is they're eating at this amazing restaurant or at this amazing beach or this amazing vacation or look at my new car. And we're constantly comparing ourselves to that.
and it's getting more advanced where if you say you have a conversation by your phone about a big box store, you're going to do a project. You'll get on your phone or on Facebook, and them advertisements are going to be there.
Yes. Yeah. That actually just happened to me not too long ago because I was telling you about my trip to Israel that's coming up, and I decided, well, you know what, I'm going to look into like some different cruises and stuff in the Greece area, around Greece and Italy and that area in Turkey, and Viking cruises was one of the ones that I looked up, right? Because they do the cruises in those areas. And I was just looking at their information. The next time I got on Facebook, guess what was on there? Viking river cruises, Viking cruises. Look at these cruises. And I was like, and this was not on Facebook whenever I was looking this stuff up. But it pulled it from my phone and it started putting it on there because it said, yeah, well, this is what he's looking up. So we're gonna throw these on there and just put it in his feed. It's sick, man. It's sick.
With
It really is.
I have two computers in my office, and then I have my phone. And it's so funny. Sometimes my wife will come in, and I'll just say a dress. She'll come in and talk to me about a dress, and then I'll go back on, and there's dresses.
Oh man, that's scary, dude. That's scary. It makes me want to turn all this stuff off and just be like, yeah, you know what? I'm just gonna live in a mud hut and just turn everything off.
I just had a podcast yesterday where he was a firefighter for 9/11, and his insurance went up to 3,900 a month. And so he moved down to Mexico, and he's living in a little 400 square foot place, with not much technology. He can be on the internet and things, but he said it's been the best 2 years of his life.
Oh
He can
man.
go out and see the ruins, Mayan ruins and things like that, instead of sitting on Facebook all day.
Oh
And I
wow.
think
Yeah.
we're all missing the real world, going back out, going after church, going to people's houses for lunch, um, visiting with people from church instead of just going on Sunday and then going back to your worldly friends.
Yes.
If you
Yeah.
think about that in the terms of addiction, It would be like one of the guys coming to an AA meeting and then going to the bar.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You're exactly right. You're exactly right. Yeah. Yeah. We need to return back to some of the pre-technology uh, things that are going on. But, as I'm almost telling people to turn off the podcast, and go do something else. Finish the podcast first, finish the podcast, and then go out and go visit with your friends. But call them on the phone, go by and visit with them. Don't just shoot them a text or look them up on Facebook and okay, now I've seen some pictures of them, so I know they're doing great. And no, you don't know that. You're seeing a mask. You're seeing a facade of what people want you to see. Go and visit with them. Learn what's going on in their life because their world's not perfect. We know that. We know it's not perfect. So don't assume that just because you see something on social media that means that everything's great.
No, you're either just got through a struggle, you're in a struggle, or about to be in a struggle. And that's just,
Amen.
in that book I was talking about, Transform You, that's one thing we do is it's Christian based, the whole book is, and how to deal with toxic people, how to deal with if somebody's not walking aligned with God, or if you're not walking aligned with God, how to get back on that. It's just you can't. We've done this to ourselves as far as some of the technology and things like that. And it's just taken us away from God, I believe, instead of bringing us closer. Even though we could watch God on YouTube, good sermons all day long, but we don't. We watch junk all day long. And then on Sunday, people go and sit and be good Christians for an hour and then go back to the world. You can't do that.
Right. And
You
never
walk
never
with
crack a
God
book.
every day.
Yeah, never crack a book open. Yeah. Their Bible just sits there and yeah. Yeah, it's
And
sad.
I love missionaries. Don't get me wrong. I've seen missionaries do some great things, but I believe people give to missionaries to try to give them a scapegoat so they don't have to disciple. And when God said to disciple, I don't think that was an option, but people use it as an option.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And that's why, shows like this where you're allowed to put, give people your testimony and talk about some of the things that you struggled with in your own walk. That's the encouraging part that people um, relate to on shows like this, and that's the reason why I wanted to open it up to other people instead of just doing it pastoral style, where I just sit and talk about something that is weighed on my mind that I read from the Bible, and I'm trying to pass it on. That's important too, but I want to hear from other people and stories like yours and experts like you who are walking that walk in a different way and how that can relate to other people. I think that's very important.
And I think small steps is a key. As far as discipleship, again, some of the guys come in and it's new to them. And I try to explain to them, or maybe somebody's an introvert. You don't have to say a word to somebody to disciple to them. Let them see when a problem comes up. And instead of freaking out, you maybe pray. Or, you say, well, I have to forgive them. That's what Jesus would do. Them little tiny things can make a huge impact on somebody's life.
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a very good point. But yeah, I talk about the one percenters. Um, essentially because God says that the road to heaven is very narrow, and not very many people are going to walk it. And it's I compare it to like it's an old dirt road that's got all the chug holes, and you can't get a good radio signal. It's a hard road to travel. It's not going to be easy, but that's the reason why not very many people take it. They're going to take the freeway where, there's 6 lanes and, you can drive 90 miles an hour. They're not going to take the small road, the tiny road, the dirt road. And that's the one percenters. So that's the one percenters that are gonna make it to heaven. And how do you become a one percenter? By getting 1% better every day.
Right.
You don't have to do it all at once. Just
No.
just take one small step every day. Just one little tip, one step.
Well, and I have said that to the guys too. You take one step at the end of the year, you're 365% better than you were the year before.
Yes.
One thing to get back to your narrow road, and I didn't come up with this, I can't even remember where I've heard it, but I've used it for years now. That narrow road, you also have to be careful because there's ditches on both sides. It's very easy to go off into a ditch. And before you
Amen.
know it, then you have to try to get out of that ditch back onto that road.
Yes. Yeah. And just because you fall off in the ditch, don't give up. Keep
Right.
keep turning the wheel till you get back on the road. You gotta don't
And
don't
I
beat
think that
yourself up over it. Give yourself some grace because God gives you grace.
one thing I always bring up is people from the Bible because God does give grace. I mean, he said David's a man after his own heart, and David did some pretty terrible things. Peter, he would have been one of them annoying friends because he always said the wrong thing. There's so if I try to show them, you don't have to be perfect. God didn't say get perfect and then come to me. He said, come to me, I'll make you, you know,
Yeah, I'll put you on the right path.
right.
Yes, I'll transform your mind. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, man, we've been talking for about 45 minutes now. Uh, so we'll probably close out here in a minute. I wish we could keep talking about this all day because this is right up my alley. I love this. I love what you're doing, and I love the path that you're taking to try to help people. You're not going for the quick fixes. You're going for the long haul, and we need more people like you out there in the world to help with these kind of problems. So, man, I praise you and every sense of the word, man. That's what you're doing is incredible, and God bless you for it.
And I try to help people all over. So somebody listening, I shouldn't say this, but ever since I've been a Christian, I've been a terrible businessman. If somebody needs help, that's the most important thing. Reach out and we'll make it work somehow. So
Absolutely. And where can people find you? Like, can you give us uh, uh, some links or Facebook pages or what's the best way to reach you?
probably you can either email coach@encompassedpurpose.com and then the book to transform you, I'd be happy to send out for free. And it's an ebook, but then also just www.encompassedpurpose.com if they want to see more about the integrative therapeutic community model. But we can do that virtual too. It doesn't have to be in person. So not
Awesome, man.
everybody can come up here for a year. So
Yes, yeah, yeah. That's great that you make that available, regardless of whether they're in the actual facility or not. What are the books that you wrote? You said you wrote four different books. Is that correct?
yeah, Encompass Purpose, like I said, I wasn't too original. Encompass Purpose 2.0, and then Awakening, and then Transform You is the last one. The other ones can all be found on like Barnes and Noble or Amazon. This one we just did the ebook because the whole purpose was to give it away. We're not charging anybody for the book. It's anybody having struggles, and actually we've had a lot of providers too that took it too. So
Awesome, man. Awesome. Well, like I said, I appreciate everything that you're doing, Dr. Berg. I wish you the best, and if there's anything that we can do to help, man, please reach out. I know I'm probably gonna blow up your phone and ask you a bunch of questions in the near future, because I always come across people who are in need of some kind of mental health, or they're dealing with addiction. A lot of people turn to pastors looking for answers, and I don't always have the answers. So, having somebody like you in my corner, man, that's a huge asset for me, and I know it's going to help a lot of people that I know. So I appreciate everything that you're doing, man, and God bless you. And we have a saying with the Lines for Christ. It's strength redeemed, purpose restored, and I think that fits with your mission as well. This is the Lions for Christ. So thank you very much for being with us, sir.
I probably will hit you up in January to come down there when it's cold in Missouri. But
Oh man, yeah. Well, hey, I should be visiting you right now then, because it is nice and toasty down here.
actually, next week, a lot of our guys live or work outside, and it's going to be 97, 98 again. So,
Oh man, yeah. Well, we're already over the century mark. We're
oh,
already over
wow.
100. Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Once it hits 95 degrees, I come inside, because I don't take the heat so well anymore. So I once it hits 95, I'm like, okay, I'm indoors now. So I just find something to do inside.
If I could mention one more thing for you and anybody listening, a lot of times the problem isn't the problem. Try to get to that root cause, and work on that. If they're addicted, they're probably self-medicating, and then the addiction got worse than the medicating. If there's always, it seems like, a root cause to everything, and just try to look at that and try not to look at the problem or the person at that time. Just, what can I do to help them?
Absolutely, man. I appreciate that. I'll definitely put that in my bank, and we'll work on that for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time, Dr. Berg. I appreciate it again. And yeah, this was a great episode, and I know a lot of people are gonna benefit from the information that you provided to us. And we'll have to talk again.
Anytime. This one by quick. So,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, when you're having a good time, man, time flies, right?
yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I appreciate your time. Thank you for being with us.
You bet. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.